Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We are going to get started in just a moment or two while we give folks just a minute. And we will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. So please feel free to add them to the chat at any time. And we will go ahead and address those right at the end of our discussion. And maybe we'll give folks one more minute or two to get settled. All right, it's about 2 minutes after, and so that we can go ahead and make sure we get through all of our content today, I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Michelle Ripper-Lewis. I'm the Vice President of Clinical Solutions and Transformation for Mentavi Health. I am a nurse by training with over 20 years experience designing clinical programs to help people engage in their health and transform their lives. Today, I'm thrilled to be moderating this webinar with our incredible mental wellness coaches, each of them with some deep expertise in the areas that directly impact the lives of the people who live with ADHD and related disorders. And we'll be focusing on the everyday wellness tools that help people engage in recharging, refueling, and refocusing. So we're going to start by having our coaches introduce themselves. If you could just give us a little bit about your background and experience, and we'll get started with Valerie Snyder, who is our expert in executive function coaching. Valerie, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Valerie Snyder. I am a behavioral health nurse by trade, a certified health and wellness coach, and a fellow ADHDer. I know firsthand the challenges and strengths that come with this wiring, and I'm passionate about helping others turn understanding into meaningful and lasting change.
Thanks, Valerie. And Amanda, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, Amanda, you're muted.
Sorry about that. My name's Amanda Chaco. I'm a certified nutritional therapy practitioner, sleep coach, and recovering insomniac. And as a parent of a child with ADHD, I have a first-hand understanding of the challenges that those with ADHD have with sleep.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. And just a quick update for everyone. Our nutrition coach, Karen, wasn't able to join today's session, but we're in great hands because Amanda brings a strong background in both sleep and nutrition coaching, especially when it comes to ADHD and neurodivergent wellness. So Amanda will be covering insights of both those areas during today's discussion. Big thanks in advance, Amanda, for that double expertise and bringing that to the table.
My
So
pleasure.
absolutely. Let's get started. Let's kick things off a little bit by talking about what executive function is. And we know, we hear the term executive function often, especially when we're talking about ADHD. And it is an invisible skill set that governs so much of our ability to stay organized, manage time, and follow through. And Valerie, you've described executive functions as the brain's internal management system. Can you tell us a bit more about what that is and why it matters so much for people with ADHD?
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. Executive functions are a set of core cognitive skills that act like our brain's management system. They help us do things like prioritize, start tasks, stay organized, manage time, and also regulate emotions. You can think of them like a set of mental processes that turn intentions into action. When EF or executive function is strong, it's easier to follow through on daily routines, manage responsibilities, and adapt to plans when they don't go as planned, or adapt to things when they don't go as planned. So when EF is challenged, as it often is in ADHD, even simple tasks can feel very complicated and overwhelming.
And then, Amanda, since you coach with both sleep and nutrition, can you share how challenges with executive function show up in people's eating or health habits?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things that I encounter when I'm working with clients is that just have difficulty planning and organizing, shopping for meals. And this really makes making healthy habits harder to keep consistent, can lead to decision fatigue, where you just apt to just grab whatever is handy or resort to fast food. And these don't always make the best healthy nutrition choices.
Absolutely. Man, I can relate to that all day, especially when we're all so busy, right? And when we run out of time, how hard it is to make smart choices.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I appreciate that so much. And then perhaps you could, kind of lean into what people with sleep issues, like how does it show up for struggles with sleep?
Sure. So yes, statistics say that over 60% of people with ADHD have some type of sleep issue or insomnia. When it comes to executive function, many of them struggle with starting and sticking with a consistent bedtime routine, and that is really critical to transitioning the body and the mind for restful sleep. Another challenge is a tendency for time blindness. It's easy for the ADHD brain to get engrossed in an activity and completely lose track of time. So, especially those that tend to be night owls, which is typical chronotype for those with ADHD. And before you know it, it's well after midnight. And you begin stressing that you need to wake up for work the next morning, and that makes it even harder to fall asleep. And over time, just lack of sleep just makes everything harder the next day.
I completely relate to that. I think sleep is so underrated in terms of its impact on our overall health, especially our brains and our ability to kind of plug into those executive functions and do the things that we're talking about today. Um, and so I really appreciate how I guess it's helpful to see how these everyday decisions that we're making about what to eat or, how we treat bedtime and sleeping are shaped by our executive functions. And
Yeah.
Valerie, you said earlier the executive functions are like the brain's management system. And I'm a big system thinker. I do a lot of operations. And so for me, that really resonated. If I can externalize a little bit, it really does help me put into perspective. I love the comment that someone made just a moment ago about how intentions mostly refuse to turn into action. Boy, I've been there and felt that way. But what we're talking about today is really exciting because we're going to take a step back and kind of think about, what are kind of those big three things. And so I know, Valerie, you really have put a lot of thought into this. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you have called the big three or dive in a little bit further around the executive function tools?
Absolutely. So, executive function really does drive the day-to-day experience of someone with ADHD. And when those skills, especially prioritization, organization, and time management, get overloaded, it can feel super chaotic really fast. So, the key is to start small and externalize what your brain is already trying to hold.
So, okay, that is a very um it makes sense when you say it, but
Mhm.
it's a pretty abstract concept to get our heads around. When you say externalize, and you've been helping me understand what that means lately through our dialogues around coaching. When we talk about externalizing our motivation or externalizing things that we can respond to, as someone with ADHD, where we have some gaps in those executive functions, can you describe that a little bit more so it's concrete for folks?
Absolutely. I think one of my favorite ways of describing it It's like when your brain's holding too much information, and it's like having, I don't know, 50,000 browser tabs open in your head. And every tab, every reminder, every unfinished project or thought eats up mental energy and it slows your system down. So externalizing is like bookmarking what matters most to your brain so that you can run those mental processes more effectively and efficiently.
Okay, so externalize because what's taking up our cognitive load, right? The amount of work our brain is doing to process all those figurative browser tabs, if you will, all the different
Mhm.
trains of thought happening. Um, by bookmarking things, we are able then to kind of get back there more quickly, efficiently, and effectively. And you're saying that externalizing is like bookmarking, right?
Yes.
I know. Amanda, does that make sense to you?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, is it something that we can like you feel like is gonna fit all the way through this dialogue when you think about sleep or nutrition?
Well, it all ties together, right? I mean, all
Mhm.
of our daily habits, everything we do throughout the day, the choices we make or we don't make is going to impact our sleep, our nutrition choices, our stress levels, energy, all of it. And it's really, you really have to take a really holistic approach
I,
to these
I
things.
Yeah, and that's why I love the beginning of this webinar series because we're going to be talking a lot about the executive functions and how to recognize where those gaps occur. And again, I agree with this person in our chat, Debbie. Thanks for adding your comments because they're really resonating. I think the paralysis, concept is not it's not new to people with ADHD, right? All those browser tabs draining our cognition and then there's not anything left to put energy into action. And we're going to talk about that more. Valerie, you've got some great tips here to talk a little bit more about externalizing and talk about your big three.
Mhm. Absolutely. I feel like I have the most trouble with these three in particular.
Mhm.
So these are things that I have tested it myself. They do work for me when I remember to use them, and that's always the thing, right? Remembering that I have these tools in my toolbox. So I'm going to just go ahead and start with prioritization. One thing to remember is that momentum starts with action, and prioritization shows you where to begin or start. So, one approach I often suggest in coaching is the top three rule, which is to identify the three tasks that matter most to you today. And they don't have to be the biggest or the hardest tasks, just the ones that are going to move you forward or bring you the biggest sense of relief once they're done. So, what it does is it quiets that internal noise that never seems to take a break. It reduces decision fatigue and it helps you to create quick focus. So that's one of my favorite things for prioritization.
So just to recap that okay, so our big three,
Mhm.
prioritization, organization, and time management. And prioritization, um, if you start with, if I ask myself today, what are the top three things that are most important? I know I've got some family responsibilities. I know I've got a work thing, a deadline, and I know I've got a personal health goal or self-care goal, maybe that's really important to me right now, like making sure that I hydrate, enough before noon or something. So I look at my top three, and then the trick now is put that into action, right? How do I turn that to action? So what I'm hearing is we're gonna narrow what we want to focus on from a priority standpoint as the first step. The next thing is maybe we make a decision about what the actions are and or how to externalize them. So I'm going to go back to Amanda now. Amanda, if self-care is one of my top three for the day, my priorities, and I want to get hydrated before noon, and we'll talk about hydration and nutrition more in a moment. How might, what's a quick tip to externalize that priority?
Have a beautiful big water bottle in your sight that you carry around, or you can have There are apps that give you reminders. Some
Mhm.
people could set like on their, Apple Watch or something, a reminder to drink. There's all different little tricks that
Yeah,
you could do.
I love that. And you're taking me back. I'm going to age myself right now. So I remember Weight Watchers before anything digital ever happened. And I think back to why it was successful, when I did it in my 20s or whatever. And it was because I was writing everything down. And we all know that tracking works, right? That's been well documented in the literature. And we see that now in our digital age with, tracking devices and so forth. But really, what I hear you saying is, put the water bottle out in front, make it visible from wherever you're at. And by decreasing the number of things we're prioritizing on, that external stimuli has a chance to be effective.
Yeah. And another trick that I use for myself is I set up my coffee pot at night before I go to bed, just so I can, that's the first thing I do in the morning is turn that on. And I fill up a glass of water the night before and I set it right next to the coffee
Oh,
pot.
yeah.
And it's really better not to drink ice cold water, especially first thing in the morning. It absorbs better if it's room temperature. So having that set out, because we lose so much hydration while we sleep through, breathing and sweating or, just whatever. Having that glass of water first thing in the morning is gonna go a long way to putting some pep in your step.
Great. So let's move on to the next one, organization. Valerie, talk to us a little bit about organization.
Well, I'm really glad Amanda mentioned visibility, coffee pot, and I'm having a hard time accepting room temperature water right now, but I'll try to. And I only drink ice cold water always. So I'm gonna have to make a change there, I guess. But as far as organization, and especially what Amanda was talking about, organization is not about perfection. It really is about visibility. So we have to see it in order to know that something needs to happen. Um, I need to do something with this. I need to take this somewhere with me. And I'm all for anything that's within my eyesight, basically. So one of the most helpful things is a whiteboard. That if you use a whiteboard and write and actually write stuff down on it, it's going to help you keep your priorities right in your line of sight. Another suggestion would be a checklist by the door. And it could be any door, it could be the front door, it could be your, bedroom door. A lot of times I like to put a checklist on my bathroom mirror because it's going to remind me of essentials if I'm walking out the door, or it's going to remind me to do that one self-care thing that I don't love to do and I need to do, like floss, right?
I was just going to say, or wash my face, take my
Take
makeup
your
off
makeup off.
time,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly. The things that you're supposed to do, but for whatever reason, they just seem too daunting to do at the moment. So that's really helpful. And another thing I like to do for organization is create a landing zone. So a landing zone is basically a small tray or a basket for things like your keys, your wallet, your phone. And the key is to put that landing zone where you naturally tend to drop things. We all have our spots. Unfortunately, where we naturally tend to drop things, like our keys, wallet, and phone, they're not all in the same place, right? So, my keys are on my kitchen cabinet. My wallet is thrown across the room in my bedroom, and my phone is probably still in my car. So, trying to get a central landing zone is very helpful. So then that way, when you walk in the door, you see, you have the visibility of the basket or tray, and you just put everything that you need there. Because what that does is it prevents that constant, where's this, where's that, the constant search. And what the ADHD brain needs is it needs to see what it wants to remember. So that's why these little tricks, tips, whatever, are so helpful.
I think it's really smart. And I do the same thing. And I didn't even realize I was doing it because I have been I've been burned by myself for being late because I didn't have my AirPods, my phone, my keys, because I couldn't find them and they landed wherever they last were or I last thought about them. So I think what I'm sensing a pattern emerging here, which sounds like if we do some work, a little bit of work around becoming aware of the things that take up a lot of our cognitive processing, we can actually make our management system in our brain run more smoothly, right? So
Mhm.
things like not having to worry about where your phone, keys, and AirPods are, it takes that off your list and you've got more room to worry about things that are more important or prioritized. And I think that might be like, I tend to go, I have far more than three things that are a priority every day. How do I break it down to three or two or one even? And I think a lot of what I'm hearing you guys say is that when you kind of get rid of some of that extra noise, they become more clear and probably our anxiety feels a little better, our overall like just general like less worry, more focus, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Um, uh, when we think about organization and time management, we also tend to kind of go, uh, time blindness. And I know, Amanda, you had talked a little bit about time blindness with with sleep, right? So can you kind of go into a little bit around sleep and some of the tips that you would offer as it relates to both being organized and prioritizing?
Sure. So again, yeah, I mean, we all should be prioritizing sleep because it's really, if you have bad sleep, nothing else is going to go right. You're going to not make good food choices. You're going to not feel focused, all things. So if you have a priority list, I would encourage you to put sleep on that list, which is going to take a little bit of organization and planning, and in any way that works for you with the different reminders that you put out. So maybe, setting an alarm that it's time to wind down at night, or maybe anchoring that against an activity like, as soon as we finish cleaning up the kitchen after dinner, we're going to start dimming the lights in the house and just really starting to prepare our bodies to wind down for sleep. Because if we race right up until bedtime, it's going to be really hard for us to power down our brains. So it's really, again, prioritizing, maybe having a curfew on your technology, not wanting to answer emails or work late into the night, finding relaxing activities, just like one thing that it's just going to chill you out. And it might be knitting, it might be coloring, it might be journaling and doing a mind dump before bed to get all of the things outside of your head to be able to prepare for sleep.
You previously we had talked a little bit about cognitive shuffling, and that's a new concept for me. Can you talk a little bit about cognitive shuffling and what it is and why it can help us?
Absolutely. So cognitive shuffling is just a technique that you use where you think about random objects to really nothing that is going to like pull you down rabbit holes or anything like that, just to shut off our constant, you know, thought process that we just can't shut our brains at night, or we're stressing out over a certain thing. So it's a technique where, you could just take the alphabet and go through the letters of the alphabet and think of like random objects until you run out of ideas for that letter and go on to the next one. And it's really effective. It's been effective for a lot of my clients and helpful for them to relax their brains and not have incessant thoughts where they can't shut their brains down.
That's
The
a
good,
I
sorry.
was just going to say that's a new skill that I didn't know about, but I'm anxious to try it, especially when I'm having one of those nights where my brain just does not want to unplug from work or solving whatever problems I'm
Yeah.
working on, right? Like, it just keeps going. And so if I try that, how like do you recommend, like, if I go through the alphabet, maybe I should think about alpacas instead of, instead of accounting, for example. So you really want to think about things that just project like peaceful images and kind of move on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? There's an app for that too.
Oh, really? Okay, tell us about that.
And it's free.
Oh,
Um,
great.
and it's
Better.
called My Sleep Button. You can get it on, Google Play or the App Store. And you just download it, and there's a timer so you could have it run for as long as you want. And there's this really soft voice that just randomly puts out these scenarios for you to visualize. So it might say, a boy floating on a raft. And then you just kind of visualize it. And before you know it, the next one comes. It's like a girl combing her hair. And you just like visualize it. And you don't have time to really go down a rabbit hole or start like going off on a tangent thought with it because they come pretty rapidly. And
Hmm.
that's been helpful to me. I actually used that technique when I was getting an MRI once because I was in the machine and I was trying not to freak out. So I used
Yeah,
cognitive shuffling to do that. But the app makes it easy. Just wear
that's
your blue
awesome.
blockers when you look at that phone at night so you don't get that blue light.
Right. We love those tools that are accessible, and free apps are certainly a great tool to use if you remember to use them. One if I'll just share like one quick tip, I tried my daughter, my 14-year-old daughter, decided that my home screen on my phone needed to be reorganized because there were too many apps everywhere. So she broke everything down into categories, put them in folders, and now I have a meditation and bedtime folder where I've got my Calm app. I've got, I might go get
Mm.
the sleep button like you just suggested. And then other things that are not like reading news or scrolling through social media. They're really going to take my mind off of all of that and put it in a place where it can really begin to do what it needs to do to prepare for sleep.
Yeah,
Um,
that's great.
so Amanda, I want to follow that up because I know sleep is such a tough one for so many people. Um, if I wake up in the middle of the night or I have a rough night of sleep and I'm of course tracking my sleep and my aura and all the things, but what do I do the next day if I have a 53 sleep score in my aura out of 100, right? It's a bad night. How do I get through the next day and not fall into the cycle of regressing back into really poor sleep in general?
Yeah. So that happens. So first, give yourself some grace and know that you will get through the day. And I think a tendency that most people have, I know that I've had it in the past, is to compensate with caffeine. So not only that morning cup of coffee, but that lunchtime coffee, that 3 o'clock crash cup of coffee. And then you just get into this vicious cycle. So you don't want to do that. So one
Mhm.
suggestion would be, really we're trying to set our circadian rhythms. So getting that morning light in your eyes. So that might be, looking outside, taking a walk. Obviously, if you live like we do in Michigan, and you get up at 5 a.m., that's not always easy. So, having a light box is really helpful as well.
Mhm.
And you could have that on while you're getting ready in the morning or, um, anywhere for like 15, 20 minutes. Staying hydrated throughout the day is really important. But again, not drinking too close to bed, or else you'll be getting up all night going to the bathroom. So,
Right,
having
right.
that earlier in the
And
day, we already talked about, hydration and its importance. And then something that I've always, not always, I mean, recently learned and have been using myself and recommending to my clients is creatine. And creatine is a supplement. It comes in both pill and powder form. It's tasteless, it's odorless. You can get it in the grocery store, you can get it online. And it used to be really known for like bodybuilders, to use for muscle composition and stuff.
Mhm.
But there are studies showing that it has many, many health benefits, which include helping cognitively. So if I have a bad sleep, I take creatine every day because I feel like it helps me. But I'll put a scoop of creatine in my coffee and then later on in my water jug. And that really helps to kind of, you know, give you a burst, re-energize your brain, help you focus. And I found it to be really helpful, with
That's great.
sadness.
That's another tip that I did not know. So let's get back over to Valerie because we're talking about our big three: organization, prioritization, organization, and time management. And so Valerie, with time management, we've talked about externalizing, right? We know that that is key. We know that setting priorities, even if it's just trying to pick three for each day, also important, and how we want to be able to turn momentum into action, or action to moment. Is it? Yeah, a momentum to action.
Intentions into action,
Yes,
momentum
intentions to action.
into
Sorry.
action,
And but
action.
with time management, like that really speaks to so many aspects of what we're doing. Everything from being hyper communicative all the way through just having good awareness of the time as it's passing. And I know time blindness is a big problem with ADHD. What do you recommend, or can you talk a little bit about time management? In terms of like a helpful tip, something we can put in that toolkit for us.
Absolutely. I think it's really important, especially for time management, to connect time to an action instead of the clock.
Mhm.
So Amanda had a really great example of anchoring, her water bottle to her coffee machine. And what you want to do is you want to anchor tasks to real cues in your environment. So, going back to the coffee machine or brewing your coffee, starting a task when your coffee brews. How long does it take your coffee to brew? 3 to 5 minutes. There's so much that can get done in 3 to 5 minutes. Another one would be like, if you're working on a task and you can feel yourself starting to get distracted or, bored, uh, if you're one of those people who listens to music while you're working or on task, um, work until the end of your playlist, because sometimes that just gives you just enough motivation to like, okay, in my head, I know I'm going to be done as soon as this last song is over, and then I can move on or whatever it is. That's a good way to connect time to action. Another thing I often like to suggest is a physical timer. I love an egg timer, and if you go on Amazon, there's so many different types of egg timers that appeal to you. There's, a funky chicken, there is a superhero, there's, Hello Kitty, I don't know, whatever, appeals to you. And I often suggest putting it out of reach too.
Mm.
So then that way, um, in order for it to stop dinging, because sensory sensitivities, I have to actually physically get up from what I'm doing and go turn it off. So that's something that I also think is a real help. And also like a clock external that has a red, like big red countdown numbers. There are apps that specifically Pomodoro apps, but the Pomodoro technique, which we haven't covered here, but you can look it up if you're not
I
familiar with
was
it.
going to mention it in a minute anyway. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. All right. And it'll actually black out your screen depending on which one. You can grow a tree, you can black out your screen and, collect tomatoes. You can, there's all kinds of fun things that you can do. But having a countdown that you can look at makes time visible. And I think one of the most important things, especially with time management, is to try to get away from managing your time with your phone as much as possible.
Mm.
Because
Mhm.
we're on our phones so much. Like I'll calendar things, I'll put reminders in, I will set the timer on my phone. And if I'm in going down a TikTok rabbit hole, it's just too easy to swipe away and forget
Mm.
what
Mhm.
what
Hence
I
the
was
getting
supposed to
up,
be doing.
right? Getting up. changing what
Mhm.
you're doing
Exactly,
so that
yeah.
you can change your outcome. And I
Hmm.
think that's a persistent theme, like in all the coaching, all the health coaching, even performance coaching. We learned that action changes things. If you want to change your mood, change what you're doing. If you want to not get sucked into that hyper focus trap that we can get into, even though in the moment we love it, but actually standing up to stretch your legs, get a deep breath, and walk away and turn the timer off is beneficial to your point. But I find it is beneficial to get up and move because
Hmm.
sometimes I'm so focused, I forget to get out of my desk chair for a very long time. So just changing my physical position is probably another help along the way.
Right. And it's really important to see time pass.
Mhm.
What it does is it helps our brain stay engaged, shift into motion when we need to, and probably most importantly is to ease that pressure of I have to do it right now. And the more pressure that I'm putting on myself of I have to do it right now, the less likely it becomes that that I'm going to get started or it's going to
Exactly.
get done.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that 100%. And I think you're spot on. I know that since I've tried some of these things, it's certainly made a big difference. And of course, if there's ADHD in your family, especially if you have children, like Amanda mentioned earlier, it's something that we all have to talk about on a regular basis. And so those activities, they serve a lot of purposes, but it sounds very much like they really help kind of at the root with ADHD and all of these executive dysfunction or functions and dysfunction. But at the same time, we're also taking care of our physical body by moving, hydrating, making more conscious decisions about what we're eating. And speaking of nutrition, Amanda, I would love to hear about any of with um, the tips or tricks that you would recommend, especially for people. I'm not trying to talk about myself, but I am so guilty as charged here. I do not have time to cook dinner in the middle of the week. And that is where I run into trouble because I'm a mom, right? And I want to feed my family well and make sure we're all eating well. So help me with and help all of us with how do we do that when we don't have time to cook? But we just want to make some positive shifts in that direction.
Sure. Well, this is also where the planning comes in, and it doesn't have to be so elaborate, but if you don't plan kind of what you want to eat, like just make a list of, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, through the week of the things that you want to have in the house. Because if you don't plan even a little bit, you're going to be more apt to get that fast food, order a pizza. And I have clients that tell me they just forget to eat completely, because of that time blindness. And they're like, oh, wow, I never ate
Hmm.
lunch, I never ate dinner. And we really want to make sure that we're, eating nutritious, balanced meals. And I think one of the most important things is to avoid blood sugar crashes. So how could we avoid that? Because that is just going to make everything worse for us. So one of the things that I think is really easy, and there are tons of recipes online for this, is just sheet pan dinners. Just
Mm-hmm.
throwing everything on a sheet pan, putting down some foil, some parchment paper, makes cleanup really easy, and pick a protein, chicken, fish, sausage and peppers. There's so many things you could do. Cut up some veggies, put some olive oil and seasoning on there, potatoes. If you don't even want to bother cutting up things, they sell them pre-cut. I guess it depends on your budget because they tend to be a little bit more expensive. Rotisserie chickens come in really handy because it's easy to prepare. It's already prepared, right? And then there's leftovers, so you could throw some mayonnaise in there, make chicken salad the next day.
Hmm.
Frozen vegetables, they freeze them when they're picked. Sometimes they're even more healthy than fresh produce because of the traveling and just, sitting if you're not getting local produce. Um, yeah, there's just so many little tricks you could do. And then, throughout the day, make sure you have some healthy grab and go snacks. So you're not running to the vending machine or, when that nice person brings donuts in for everybody to share, and then you're just like starving, so you're gonna grab it. So things like string cheese, or have some extra cut up veggies and some dip, plain yogurt with some fruit, an apple with some nut butter, nuts. I mean, there's so many like handy little things that you could pack. And again, making sure you stay hydrated throughout the day as well.
Your meal planning for simple meals is such great advice. It's really hard to do, especially when life is busy, and even our weekends, depending on folks' individual work schedules and stuff, even our weekends get full. And I always forget about how easy sheet pan meals are. I don't know why. They're delicious and there are a million recipes for them. But it seems like, in addition to just saying, hey, I'm just going to try to have one meal that I cook quick and easy, that's like well balanced, and have some leftovers, right? That's not a lot to try to change in a week. It's one day. It just seems like a really concrete, approachable, easy step. Uh, and I think where coaching can help us, and I am again guilty as charged, right? Like, it's when it's the repeating the behavior until it becomes a habit or just part of your new normal. So how do I get to new normal now that I've learned some tips and tricks about my executive functions and the big three, these prioritization, organization, and time management? We bring it all the way home to um, all of Valerie's great tips on externalizing and how to do that. And then through the lens of sleep and nutrition as examples, these are little bitty changes we can make. And you guys are giving us such great tools. I love all of your examples. And I'm sure with a little bit of planning, even just a short list for the market and looking at your schedule for the week, is there one night that I could make this happen? Um,
Mhm.
it's interesting. I tend to overload my plate, like most people with ADHD, and strive for perfection and try to take on too much and do it. I got to do it 5 nights a week. And I think that leads us to that cycle of feeling bad about not being able to do those things, and kind of the negative self-talk that can come from it. So in the spirit of kind of pulling all this together in this toolkit that we've created, I would love for the two of you to think about, if you were to going to offer this audience, one thing to try this week for sleep, um, as a place to start. Amanda, what would you pick?
Um, I would say a good place to start is with that wind down routine that we're talking about. And it doesn't have to be, something very complicated or extravagant. I think really building habits is being consistent as much as you can, but also doing things that you look forward to. So if you could find things, make your room a sleep sanctuary that you look forward to, going to every night, or that warm bath, to relax, or whatever works for you, finding the one thing that's going to help you wind down and having a consistent sleep and wake schedule, I think
Mhm.
is key to getting into the routine where it just becomes second nature. Your body, your circadian rhythms expect routine. So eating the same time, working out the same time, going to bed the same time when possible. I mean, it's not always possible with life. Um, and just thinking about how, and I think if you're in a routine and things become automated like that, it becomes much less stressful than every day trying to figure out something new.
Beautiful. And Valerie, what do you think? What is your, like, if you have to have a place to start, you've talked a little bit about, the big three, um, for the audience, especially if you're going to walk away today, and assuming our audience feels a lot like like, most people with ADHD and so many of our coaching clients and patients at Mentavi, what's the one thing that they should take away to sort of start thinking about this?
Honestly, I think one of the most important things to managing your ADHD and getting better at these tools that we gave everybody is really, and it's something that we didn't discuss, but I think it's really important, is mindset. I think just giving yourself permission and grace to not be perfect. Look at, like, when we get these tools and such, I think everybody's intention is to do the thing perfectly, starting right now and forever for the rest of my life. And that's a lot of pressure. So I think just approaching any of these things and looking at it as collecting data, like, did it work? Did it change anything? Did it make it better? Did it make it worse? Just really understanding your ADHD and how it presents, and just trying something and not expecting perfection. I think that really is one of the most
Really
important
it,
things.
right? We got to have a lot of self-compassion. I mean,
Absolutely.
ADHD is a condition that we live with for our entire lives, right? And many of us were not diagnosed as children. And we know that. And we also know that we've created coping skills and we've learned to manage through it. However, it doesn't change the fact that it's hard. And it
Mhm.
gets harder as life gets busier or more stressful. Those times of stress and change often, different phases of life even can cause those symptoms to wax and wane, which is why we know that there are many adults who have subthreshold presentation of ADHD symptoms because they've learned to manage them themselves so well over time. But when we get stressed by work, family, grief, loss, whatever it might be, the risk is truly there, and it does make us more vulnerable and drives things like anxiety and depression. And so I really love all of the tips you guys shared today. I can't wait to have another webinar and talk more, but I know we've got some questions from the audience, and I also just want to thank you both and let everyone on the call know that these two ladies are so they're just so expert in their knowledge, and that coaching can actually help you do these things and turn them into, lifelong behavior change. And that's really powerful. Far more powerful for me than medication's ever been, or everybody has to do a little therapy at different times in your life. And that's a different thing for a different reason. More, it's foundational work and it's different from coaching. And I think it's important that everybody realizes that coaching is really there as a way and a means to help you change your behaviors so that you can really achieve your goals and be successful at these things that are important to us. And so thank you both so much.
And let's, we'll wrap that up
Yep.
and we can answer individual questions separately afterwards. We will make a recording of the session available. We'll send it out in a link over the next couple days. And then we'll be doing these every month. So we hope to see everybody back here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both so much. You both are amazing coaches, and I'm so grateful to be working with you and building this together at Mentavi, and certainly for our audience and everybody that attended. Thank you so much for your time. We hope it was helpful, and you can schedule your coaching visit. Visit our website, adhdonline.com, and / I think it's coaching-mental-wellness. If you would like to see the profiles of our coaches or learn more about coaching, we certainly look forward to the next one. Thank you again, Suzanne and Amanda and Valerie, for all of your hard work to be here today and for all the work we're doing together. Hope you have a great night, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.